There was a time when BLACKPINK didn't just look like a group, they looked unstoppable. For members, one stage, one unmistakable identity. Jisoo, Jennie, Rose, and Lisa seemed to move like a perfectly synchronized team. Whether they were performing in front of thousands of screaming fans, appearing on television, or simply sharing moments together, there was a sense that these four women had built something bigger than individual careers. But lately, something feels different. And that is exactly why fans are asking a question that would have sounded almost impossible a few years ago. Has BLACKPINK lost the chemistry that once made them feel inseparable? Every few days, another discussion seems to appear online. One member is pursuing a solo project. Another is focused on acting. Another is releasing music independently. Another is working with different teams and companies. And suddenly, fans are looking at the group differently. Not necessarily because BLACKPINK has officially announced anything dramatic. They haven't. But because the space between their individual careers appears to be getting bigger. And when a group becomes this successful, even small changes can create enormous speculation. So, is this simply the natural evolution of four global superstars? Or are we watching the beginning of the end of BLACKPINK as fans once knew it? Let's get into it. For years, BLACKPINK's greatest strength was not just their music. It was their identity as four. You could mention one member and immediately think of the other three. Their names became almost inseparable. Jisoo brought her own personality and artistic direction. Jennie developed into a major solo force. Rose established herself as a distinctive singer and performer. Lisa became one of the biggest global stars in her own right. But despite those individual identities, BLACKPINK remained the center of the story. That balance was extremely difficult to maintain. Because when four people become internationally famous at the same time, eventually their careers start moving in different directions. And that is where things become complicated. Imagine being part of one of the world's biggest girl groups, while simultaneously becoming a global celebrity with your own ambitions, your own creative ideas, your own schedule, your own business interests, and your own audience. At some point, the question isn't simply, can the group continue? The question becomes, how does the group fit into four individual lives that are becoming bigger and bigger? That may be the real issue behind the recent BLACKPINK discussions. Not necessarily a feud, not necessarily hatred, not necessarily a breakup, but something much more subtle, distance. And sometimes, distance is harder for fans to understand than an actual argument. Because there doesn't have to be a dramatic fight for a group dynamic to change. People grow, priorities change, careers evolve, and friendships can look completely different after years of pressure and success. BLACKPINK has been together for a long time. They debuted in 2016. That means the members have spent years growing up in an environment most people could never imagine. They went from young performers trying to establish themselves to global superstars recognized almost everywhere. That journey changes people. And now, each member has built a powerful identity outside the group. Jisoo has expanded into acting and solo music. Jennie has developed her own artistic and business direction. Rose has continued developing her individual musical identity. Lisa has built an enormous international presence through music, fashion, and entertainment. And that creates an interesting situation. BLACKPINK doesn't have four members desperately trying to become famous anymore. BLACKPINK has four famous women who already have their own careers. That's a huge difference. And it may explain why the group sometimes feels less constantly present than it did during their earlier years. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Fans don't necessarily expect BLACKPINK to be together every single day. What they want is reassurance. They want to feel that the bond still exists. Because BLACKPINK's appeal was always partly emotional. Fans didn't just support four singers. They supported the idea of four women who had grown together. So when fans see fewer group interactions, fewer appearances, or longer periods focused on solo activities, they naturally start asking questions. And social media makes those questions much louder. A single photo can generate thousands of theories. A missing member can become a headline. A short interaction can be analyzed frame by frame. A simple facial expression can suddenly become evidence of tension. And that's where we need to slow down. Because not every awkward moment means there is an argument. Not every period of silence means a friendship has ended. And not every solo project means a group is collapsing. In fact, the opposite could be true. The members may simply have more freedom than they had before. That freedom could actually allow BLACKPINK to survive longer. Think about it. If every member had to depend entirely on the group for their career, pressure would constantly build. But now they can explore individual interests without necessarily abandoning BLACKPINK. That could be healthy. However, there is another side to this. The more successful their solo careers become, the harder it becomes to coordinate four schedules. Imagine trying to organize recording sessions, rehearsals, music videos, promotional appearances, concerts, fashion commitments, acting projects, brand campaigns, and personal time across four people with international careers. It's complicated, and that's before management and business considerations even enter the picture. This is why BLACKPINK's future may not be as simple as either together or broken up. There could be a third possibility. A group that exists differently. A group that doesn't release music constantly. A group that reunites for major projects. A group that spends long periods apart but still comes together when the timing is right. And honestly, that might be the most realistic future. Because the traditional idea of a group, for people constantly promoting together, releasing music every year, appearing everywhere together, may no longer fit BLACKPINK's reality. They are too big. Their careers are too complicated. Their individual brands are too powerful. And their audiences are global. So perhaps the real question isn't, will BLACKPINK break up? Maybe it's, can BLACKPINK remain BLACKPINK while allowing all four members to become their own artists? That is much more difficult. And fans have another reason to be nervous. The longer members operate separately, the more comfortable audiences become with them as solo stars. Jennie has her own fan base. Lisa has her own enormous following. Rose has her own musical identity. Jisoo has her own acting and music audience. The danger isn't necessarily that they stop caring about BLACKPINK. The danger is that their individual careers become so successful that the group becomes harder to prioritize. And that's happened before with major music groups. The members don't have to hate each other. They don't even have to stop being friends. Sometimes a group simply becomes less practical. That's the uncomfortable truth. But there is one thing fans should remember. BLACKPINK's history shows that these four women understand the power of coming together. Whenever they reunite, the reaction is enormous. Their group identity still has extraordinary commercial and cultural power, and that gives them a reason to keep the door open. So if you're expecting a dramatic announcement saying, BLACKPINK is officially over, there is currently no reason to jump to that conclusion simply because the members are spending more time on individual careers. But the speculation isn't coming from nowhere either. The group dynamic has undeniably evolved. And perhaps that is what fans are actually sensing. The old BLACKPINK, the version where the four members seemed constantly connected, may be changing. But changing doesn't automatically mean ending. That's the distinction that gets lost online. A group can change without disappearing. A friendship can become less public without becoming fake. A career can become more independent without destroying a team. And BLACKPINK may be entering exactly that phase. Still, there is one question that nobody can completely answer. What happens if their individual ambitions eventually become bigger than the group itself? What happens if one member wants to focus heavily on acting? What happens if another wants to spend years making solo music? What happens if another prioritizes global projects? And what happens if their schedules simply stop aligning? That's when the future becomes uncertain. Because BLACKPINK doesn't need a dramatic scandal to reach a crossroads. Time alone can create one. Every year that passes gives the members more opportunities outside the group. And eventually, they have to decide how much of their future belongs to BLACKPINK and how much belongs to themselves. But perhaps that's not a sad story. Perhaps it's actually the natural story of 4 people who grew together and became successful enough to choose their own paths. The mistake would be expecting them to remain exactly the same forever. They won't. None of us do. The BLACKPINK that debuted in 2016 was made up of young women entering an industry that demanded almost everything from them. The BLACKPINK of today consists of global stars who have already proven that they can stand on their own. That's not necessarily the death of the group. It may simply be the next chapter. And there is something strangely beautiful about that. Because if BLACKPINK eventually performs together again after months or even years apart, the excitement may actually be bigger. Fans will appreciate those moments differently. Every group performance will feel more special because it isn't guaranteed to happen constantly. Every new song will become an event. Every appearance will create headlines. Every reunion will remind people why those 4 names became so powerful together in the first place. But until that happens, the speculation will continue. Fans will keep analyzing photos. They'll keep watching interviews. They'll keep looking for clues. And every quiet period will produce another theory. Maybe they're fighting. Maybe they're drifting apart. Maybe one member is leaving. Maybe the group is finished. Or maybe none of those things are true. Maybe 4 women who spent most of their youth working together are simply learning how to have individual lives. And that may be the most important thing to understand. Because sometimes the internet sees silence and calls it conflict. It sees independence and calls it separation. It sees change and calls it the end. But real life is rarely that simple. As of now, the safest conclusion is not that BLACKPINK is definitely breaking up. It's that BLACKPINK has entered a completely different era. An era where the members are no longer defined only by the group. An era where solo careers matter just as much. An era where reunions may become more important than constant appearances. And an era where the future of BLACKPINK may depend on whether 4 increasingly independent superstars can still find reasons to come together. So, has BLACKPINK lost the old chemistry? Maybe the chemistry hasn't disappeared. Maybe it has simply changed. And perhaps that's what fans are really feeling. The old version of BLACKPINK may never return exactly as it was. But that doesn't mean the story is over. It could mean the next chapter is only beginning. And if these 4 women can successfully balance their individual dreams with a legacy they built together, BLACKPINK may prove something even more impressive. That a group doesn't have to remain exactly the same to remain powerful. Because sometimes, the strongest teams aren't the ones that never change. They're the ones that change, and still find their way back to each other. And that is why the BLACKPINK story remains so fascinating. The question isn't simply whether the group will survive. The real question is, when Jisoo, Jennie, Rose, and Lisa come together again, will it still feel like BLACKPINK? Only time will tell. And until then, every new appearance, every new project, and every unexpected moment between the 4 members will continue to fuel the biggest question in BLACKPINK's future. Are they simply growing apart? Or are they preparing to redefine what BLACKPINK really means?